Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry we're a bit late. I want to thank Senators Menendez and Shaheen were supposed to be here, but they have a very important hearing in foreign relations, so they had to go there. All right. Well, the president's abrupt and reckless decision to withdraw U.S. troops from Northern Syria after a phone call from President Erdogan has put our country in danger as captured ISIS fighters return to the global battlefield. And it's a clear demonstration of the president's fecklessness when it comes to dealing with dictators. This is one of the worst decisions in decades. It puts Americans here in the homeland in danger. And we in New York know that almost better than anybody else, because we saw that a small group of dedicated, evil terrorists 7,000 miles away could do huge damage to our city and to our country. We don't even know what's going to happen next. The Trump administration can't say what the plan is because they don't even have one. You don't blame the people in the bureaucracy. They were totally caught by surprise, as were our military leaders, our diplomatic leaders, our intelligence leaders, by what Trump did. So it's essential for the Senate to take action because the president has no plan. So I will call again in a few minutes for unanimous consent to pass the House resolution condemning the president's decision to precipitously withdraw from Northern Syria. While Leader McConnell first it seemed friendly to this, he now seems to be going another path, and that's unfortunate for the country, because the best way to put pressure on this president is for Republican senators and congressmen to do it. Leaders McCarthy and Scalise and Cheney had the courage to do it, but our Senate leaders don't, because otherwise they'd pass the resolution bipartisan by Senators Menendez and Young. We don't know how many of the 10,000 ISIS detainees, many of whom were hardened fighters and their families have escaped. We don't know where they've gone, nor if there's any plan to get them back to detention facilities. These people who escaped are dangerous people, dangerous to our homeland, dangerous to our allies, dangerous to our troops, dangerous to our interests abroad. And President Trump just gave them a free boost. I've never seen anything like it. The New York Times this morning reported, quote, "Mr. Trump's pullout has handed the Islamic State its biggest win in more than 4 years and greatly improved its prospects." That sums it up. How can we have a president who does this? As a New Yorker, as I mentioned, I know how bad these things can be. The president's incompetence and weakness with Erdogan has handed ISIS a get-out-of-jail-free card and put American lives in danger. For the sake of national security, President Trump and his administration, who knows if they even work together anymore, need to get a handle on this situation. They need to answer the question, what's the plan? What's the strategy? We've been demanding the administration's top officials, Secretaries Esper and Pompeo, General Milley, give the Senate a briefing on its Syria policy and plan to contain and further degrade ISIS. They canceled a briefing last week and now pulled the plug on a briefing that was supposed to be this afternoon. And the answer is obvious why. They don't have a plan, so they can't come before us with nothing. I don't blame them. I blame the president. I blame Pompeo some, too. I don't blame General Milley or Esper. We need the briefing. We need to know the plan to keep America safe. Senator Reid.
Well, thank you, Leader. The President's impetuous decision to betray the Kurds and acquiesce to the Turkish invasion has been a catastrophe for the United States. It's a disaster strategically. In making this unforced error, President Trump strengthened the hand of Erdogan, Putin, Assad, and Khomeini. And since taking that fateful call from Erdogan, the President has flailed around offering various explanations of the call and the strategy and the plan, but as the leader said, there is no plan. This is make it up as you go. And it's not going to rebound to the benefit of the United States of America. Now, Erdogan and Putin are meeting. Erdogan has basically said that if the ceasefire ends, he'll start up again where he left off. General Mazlum, the leader of the Kurds, has indicated that Turkey is engaged in the biggest ethnic cleansing operation of the 21st century as our troops pull out and leave our Kurdish allies behind. In ordering this haste to withdraw, as the leader said, President Trump has allowed ISIS personnel to escape or evade or be unaccounted for. We have no real transparency into what is happening with these personnel in Syria. And as a result, we've increased the threat to the region and increased the threat to the homeland. And that is very, very dangerous. At a minimum, I think the president right now should revoke the invitation to President Erdogan to visit the United States in November. How can you invite an autocrat that has just invaded a country, that is pursuing your former allies, that is consorting with one of our international opponents, at least adversaries, the Russians? How can you invite him to come here to the United States?
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Thank you, Ranking Member Reed. Over the past 5 years, American troops stood shoulder to shoulder with the Kurds, retaking ISIS caliphate inch by inch, foot by foot, town by town. And in the process, they became our brothers and sisters in arms. They bled for us, they died for us, and yet Trump has broken our word to them. In the days since Trump's decision, just under 2 weeks, Assad has consolidated his rule over swaths of northern Syria. Russia has filled the power vacuum we left behind. Hundreds, if not thousands, of ISIS fighters have escaped. We have lost our intelligence assets on the ground, because who will work with us now that we cannot be trusted to keep our word? Our own troops have been shelled by Turkey, while we've likely also lost the ability to fly drones over these areas that are now controlled by Russia. None of these outcomes is an America First policy. None of these outcomes makes America great again. After all, who would want to partner with a nation that will not keep its word? And let me tell you, if I were a division commander or a special operator right now, I would be brushing off my op plans, knowing that it is highly likely I would have to be reinserted back into the region as ISIS fighters move towards Iraq. We'll be forced to send more American troops when ISIS raises the black and white flag yet once again. Bipartisan congressional majorities have already been pleading with Trump to reverse course, but it is up to him and him alone to do the right thing. He alone is responsible for those ISIS fighters being let go. Well, that's going to take more than just a temporary deal with Turkey that handed Erdogan everything he wanted by forcing the Kurds out of their homes. A deal so inadequate that no one can even agree on whether it is a ceasefire or a pause. Instead, it's actually going to take Trump working with Congress, our allies, and local players to come up with a long-term solution to piece back together the equilibrium he chose to shatter. I am tired of Trump wrapping himself in the flag in the morning and then abandoning our troops and our allies and our values by the afternoon. So in this moment, he'd do well to show even an ounce of the bravery that our Kurdish partners have shown and start protecting American interests rather than ceding them to whichever autocrat calls him next.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Tammy. We have two of our military experts here, so.
So we have
yes.
a combat veteran with great
And a combat
valor,
veteran,
and we
yeah.
have an old soldier.
Jumped out of airplanes. He's not so old.
The president's use of the word lynching as an unfortunate choice of words to describe the impeachment inquiry. I'm wondering, is it ever appropriate to use that word as a, I guess, a synonym for?
Look, I think what.
And do you think that the president understood the history of the word?
I have no idea, but he never should have used the word. Never.
if we get to a Senate trial for impeachment here, are you concerned about the length and therefore what it would do to the Democratic presidential candidates on your side of the aisle having to be here versus being out campaigning?
Well, I haven't-
And what that looks like?
I haven't thought of that at all. Our position on impeachment is threefold. One, we think, certainly I think, and I think most of my colleagues in the Senate, that Nancy Pelosi is doing an excellent job. Number two, we need all the facts to come out. This idea of the administration not letting people testify, not producing documents, trying to stand in the way of the facts coming out is just so wrong, and also engenders the question, what are they hiding? And third, as jurors, potential jurors, I don't think it's appropriate for we senators to take a position on the final outcome. Let's see the facts, let's see what the House puts forward, and then we will go from there.
This morning, Senator McConnell urged caution on moving forward on the robust sanctions package related to Turkey. What's your sense right now? Will there be sanctions related to Turkey that get to the floor? Will they pass?
Well, look, the first thing that ought to happen is we ought to pass the bill that passed the House. And last Wednesday night, Leader McConnell seemed to be amenable to that. And now it's almost a 180-degree turn to come up with his own partisan resolution that will never see the light of day in the House. One wonders, does he care more about protecting President Trump than protecting America?
Leader McConnell just said that a conversation that the president claims they had where McConnell called his phone call perfect and innocent never happened as far as he can.
I'll let the two of them figure that out for themselves.
Fair enough, but I'm wondering if from your perspective, do you believe that the president's relationship with the truth is evolving, changing, or is what it
Look, if you look at the Washington Post, your fellow journalist there, I forget how many times Trump has lied. Is it 3,000 or 13,000 or some enormous number? So when President Trump says something, I think people's initial reaction, unless you're a devout Trump supporter, is skepticism.
Is there a concern about driving Turkey into the Russians with this agreement announced today that that Russia and Turkey are going to do some
You want to
joint
answer that,
patrols?
Jeff? Go ahead.
I mean, if you do sanctions or if you,
Yep, go ahead.
retaliate.
Well, at today's meeting with the Russians, it's pretty clear that they have an agreement that they're going to operate jointly to expel the Kurds from that exclusion zone that they want to create. And it's another indication of the failed foreign policy. We've driven a NATO ally closer and closer into the arms of Russia.
Is that pretty surprising to see a NATO ally make that kind of agreement?
It is surprising, and it should cause us to, again, to think very hard about how do we go ahead and reverse that trend as they move towards the Russians. It's not without cause that we have taken steps. The Turks bought the S-400 system, which we have put sanctions on them for, to send a signal that's not appropriate for a NATO ally to have that type of Russian equipment. But this agreement or this acquiescence the President made just completely upends all of our relationships with Turkey, and it's a tragedy.
Is there some sense that maybe there's no going back here and there's no way of fixing some of these relationships even if you elect another president?
We have no choice to go to fix them and not wait for another president. There are ISIS prisoners escaping who aim to do harm in the United States. So we have to, and there's an obligation of President Trump, but we all know he puts himself first, way ahead of the security of America, but of our Republican colleagues in the Senate, and frankly, of the people who work for him, Secretary Pompeo, Secretary Esper. They ought to be demanding this for the safety of the people who work for them, both the troops and the diplomatic corps, as well as for the people of America. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.